But for the
Mhm.
most part, it just seems like everybody's just happy to sweep scandals under the rug, believing in some bizarre corner of their mind that it never catches up with you. I'm Scott.
I'm Mark.
And this is Church is Lame, the podcast where we talk about stupid Christians and how they make the church look stupid.
Yeah, I was gonna go with that, but I wasn't sure.
Yeah.
Just and there has been some stupidity this week, but like thankfully, this particular bit of stupidity that I wanted to start with is not American stupidity for once.
Dun dun dun.
Yeah, yeah. So we go out to great merry ye old England, to the Archbishop of Canterbury, Justin Welby, who resigned recently amid a whole bunch of allegations about mishandling of a cover up and whatnot of a situation of abuse that happened within the confines of the Anglican Church. Specifically, there was a lay leader, John Smith, in the 80s or 70s and 80s, who was a leader at various camps that the Anglican Church had, who was accused of beating over 100 boys, like savagely.
Oh my. So it's not one instance, it's 100 instances.
Yeah,
Yeah.
100
Wow.
discrete instances or more. Some people have come forward, some people haven't. You know how it is.
Yeah.
But I mean, and this is just the weird part. It's just like he did this, telling the boys that this violent punishment would cure them of their sins.
Oh jeez. So first of all, before we even try to dive into this, let's just do the numbers. 1970s to 1980s, roughly 10 years, 100 boys, 10 boys per year.
Yeah.
How do you get away with that? How do you literally abuse that many boys every year and nobody notices?
And that's, yeah, kind of like the scale of it is mind-boggling.
Yeah.
And I mean, like, maybe it's because it was the 70s and 80s and there was just so much shame in admitting that this happened to you, like that the boys just, you know, couldn't tell anyone that that's what was happening.
Right.
But like, I'm really retconning here.
Yeah. There's something to be said that the 1970s is not what it is now, and you didn't dare speak up against the beloved leader in the church. Certainly, if you're a boy, and
Mhm.
um, and parents, I guess, also would be kind of trained not to upset the status quo. Just
Oh,
unbelievable.
yeah, and I'm absolutely sure that, you know, like these beatings were probably timed such as like that they could, probably heal before they went home, or maybe he threatened them if they told anybody.
Yeah,
I mean, it's disgusting.
yeah,
Um, and what's like more gross is just about, I think, than even like some of the stuff we've talked about with like the SBC, the Southern Baptist Conference, and like their whole sexual abuse problems,
yeah,
is just the utter failure of leadership that like straight up like went like hard in the, oh, we're just gonna like cover this up.
yeah. That's
you know
the infuriating part. Is okay. This is all public now, so why would you let the man resign? Fire his ass and make an example out of him, and make sure that this never happens anywhere ever again in the church.
yeah, and the archbishop had said that, when he was, dealing with the Christian camps, that supposedly somebody had gone to Welby at that time.
Yeah,
And he said that, like, that it was not true. Nobody ever told him directly, and that he heard, quote unquote, some vague accusations from a minister in Paris, 1981,
yeah,
or but didn't learn detailed allegations until 2013 when he became archbishop.
yeah,
And you know, okay, if you're not an archbishop, you're going to be limited to the information you get.
yeah,
But apparently, like, you were working at these camps, So you were in the arena in which you could have looked into these allegations.
Right.
You could have done research. You could have pushed it up the line.
Yeah.
You could have talked to the archbishop then. But you didn't. And then the Anglican Church like deliberately, they said they wanted to keep it private, and that's what we in America call covering it up,
Right.
um, because it would be better for the pastors and the staff and the victims by not prosecuting this gross misbehavior.
Yeah. If there's one thing this show has taught me over the last 2 years, 2 years, dude, can you believe it? 2 years. If there's one thing this show has taught me doing these stories, is that the human brain seems to be wired to come to the conclusion, why nip a problem in the bud when now when you can let it fester and deal with it later.
Mhm.
As long as you deal with it at some point, it's fine. That just seems to be the way the human mind works on a large scale, right? When you kind of average the numbers out over everybody. Yes, there are exceptions, and there are people who kind of can see the now and the value of the now. But for the
Mhm.
most part, it just seems like everybody's just happy to sweep scandals under the rug, believing in some bizarre corner of their mind that it never catches up with you.
Yeah, and it's like this is terribly obscene. And one of the things, when we complain about, like churches need oversight,
Yeah,
um, this is a denomination with a very strict hierarchy. There should have been that oversight. It should have been
yeah,
present. And it
exactly.
somehow wasn't there. Like in the Bible study that I'm doing right now, I'm going through and I'm just kind of looking at, like what is the church's role in dealing with government,
Yeah,
in a more broad sense. I'm
yeah,
not looking at policies, but like going back to First Samuel, when the people went to Samuel and said, "Hey, we need a king."
yeah,
Like that was kind of where it all gets screwed up. And God assured people, it's like, look, if you need a king that isn't me, like they're going to abuse you, they're going to mistreat you, they're going to take advantage of you.
yeah.
And like the church at this point thinks it is somehow exempted from that very dire view of human leadership.
Yeah. I don't know that I have a lot more to say about this. One thing I did want to mention though, one of the things we mentioned at the beginning is there is a generational aspect of this.
Yeah.
When we're talking about kids of the 70s and 80s, we're talking about Gen Xers, right? Otherwise known as the forgotten generation. We are the kids who are allowed to bicycle our way across 5 towns and not have to phone home and tell anybody about it. We are the latchkey kids. We're the ones who walked home and it was okay for nobody to be home when we got there. So
Hmm.
part of this is just the generation of the time. Mom and dad were both working. We were recovering from Vietnam, um, and so you just kept your problems to yourself, right? Because
Yeah.
mom and dad had bigger fish to fry um, than quote unquote false accusations against the church leader. So yeah, but we say it every week: radical accountability, radical transparency. You got to have it. You're doomed to fail without it.
Yeah, for sure. So what have you found this week? And hopefully it's well less sad than this one.
It's less sad to be sure, but it's probably going to be the most enraging of the stories that we have today.
Good times.
In a sense, right? In a different way than this story was enraging. We're going to go back to our good friend Greg Locke.
Oh
Greg
dear.
Locke, the gift that keeps on giving when it
He
comes
is
to
like
terrible leadership.
he is the herpes of Christianity.
I love it. I love it. Okay, so Greg Locke is he is like the poster boy for um, promises made, promises broken, right?
Mm.
And so in the latest state, his church and has tried to raise money to move into a new facility, right?
Okay.
$5.5 million was what they wanted to raise, and they raised about a half mil, right?
A
And
half a
so,
mil?
yeah, they raised
What the
about. Hey, it's every church has some wealthy benefactors, right?
Yeah.
And so that wealthy benefactors are almost always responsible for the bulk of the fundraising, which is
Mhm.
fine. You know, it is what it is.
Yeah.
Um, what was interesting though is as prosperity gospel um, miscreants seem to like to do is the money back guarantee, which has seemed to be very popular in the last year or so. You
Mhm.
know, give money and watch God multiply, and it'll be given back to you. And in this case, you know, Greg took it further in that, like, if we don't do this thing, you know, I'll give your money back to you, kind of thing. You know, and
It
so
sounds reasonable.
they didn't do it. They fell well short of $5.5 million, and some of the congregation came back and said, "Okay, like this money is not going towards the building and the new acquisition of the building, and I did not contribute this money for general purposes. I donated this money to the building acquisition fund. So, hey, let's give it back. You know, let your yeses be yeses and nos be nos." And Greg Locke had some choice words to say, and then, like, without wanting to belabor the point, his final word on the matter was, "Talk to my lawyers."
Yeah, because like nothing says I'm above board.
Right,
Like up to my lawyers.
right. Nothing says I'm a great man of God like hiding behind a wall of lawyers.
Ugh.
Yeah.
Another thing that is just decried as shameful in the
Yeah,
Bible. Um,
unbelievable. And
like,
so the only part, so before we get into our opinions, let me just add the
mhm,
last wrinkle here.
yeah.
Is that in recent history, and I don't know if recent history means during the same time frame as they've been fundraising, $1 million he's spent for 28 acres of land, as well as 3 new cars for himself, his wife, and his daughter.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
Just living the Vita humble.
right.
Like
Yeah,
okay, so like a while back, there was this kind of to do in the headlines because Greg Locke was all like, "Hey, okay, I'm gonna like mellow out and not be like all crazy inflammatory. People are taking things out of context and trying to make me look bad, and that's not what it's about."
yeah,
And then he pulls this crap.
yeah,
Like, I mean, I'm not surprised,
yeah,
but it's agonizingly stupid.
yeah. And then he went on to shame those same people by saying, "Hey, look, if you look at the books, which I'm not going to let you look at, by the way, but if you look at the books, it was our wealthy benefactors and myself who contributed the lion's share of the money, and actual attenders of the church barely contributed anything." So that was his final argument. What an a-hole! I swear to God. Just I hate that, like, the level of discourse goes down to that. But man, if your pastor is an a-hole, that's a good sign that that's not a church worth going to.
I mean, Greg Locke has clearly been an a-hole for a long while now,
Yeah,
or if not an a-hole, just insane.
yeah,
Take your pick.
right.
Um, and like I want to be, I want to give him the benefit of the doubt that he really is, a child of God. But then he does things like this, which just demonstrates a lack of the fruit of the spirit in a major way.
Yeah. And if it's really true that the rich people donated all the money and the attenders did nothing, it hurts you none at all to give the money back to them. It's literally pennies. It's a rounding error, compared to the hundreds of thousands of dollars your benefactors gave to you.
Yeah, like that's a big duh moment that should have occurred to him, but
Right.
didn't.
And once again, this is not just kind of you and me talking. We can point to the Bible, which we ought to do once in a while. Um, you know, a woman throws her last few pennies into the offering. And at this point in the story, like, Jesus is railing, he's
Mhm.
railing, and then he stops and takes notice of this woman who is impoverished but gives to the church anyway. He takes a note of it and then goes back to railing, right? And he's building a case saying, "Look at you idiots. Look at all you church leaders. Look at this woman. How dare you build your church off the back of those who need you the most? You know,
Mhm.
the poorest, the hungriest, the sickest. These are not the people that you that you'd milk every last penny out of. Those are the people that your funds go towards. That's where you funnel your resources into to
Mhm.
help elevate everybody. We elevate the most marginalized, and then we elevate everybody together. And how churches don't get this message is just beyond me. I don't know.
Yeah. And just like it says it very clearly in scripture, like whoever wants to be greatest must be servant of all.
Right.
And there's no way to call yourself a servant of all when you're buying a $1.6 million mansion and
Right.
then refusing to give your congregants back the pittance that they contributed to a project that you failed to get off the ground.
Yeah. Yep. And let me say this, because I definitely want people to hear this from me.
Mhm.
I am not against churches organizing and creating systems, creating infrastructure, right? So like people a lot of times when they read the Bible, they they romanticize it in a weird way, right?
Yeah.
So kind of like, oh, here's Jesus and his 12 dudes just kind of walking the earth together, right? But like, look, when you say, look, you need to go this way and tell those people of my arrival, and you need to go that way, and you're going to tell those people of my arrival. That's called organization, right? He's got an
Yeah.
organizational structure, and he's putting them to work because he's the God man. He's a man who can't do everything, right? So you're preaching in one town, and you send ahead your messengers at the next town that the Messiah's on his way. So, like, I don't think you or I have any problem with the infrastructure of church. I don't think
No.
we have a problem with that at all, no matter how big your church is, right? If you've got 500,000 people, then by all means, you need an infrastructure to support your 500,000 people as best you can, right? But
Mhm.
there is a difference between building the infrastructure that supports your people and just building an infrastructure that is just a big spotlight on look how cool I am, right? Those are two different
Right.
things. And not only you as the pastor, but your people should know the difference between the two and should know when to walk away.
Yeah. I mean, this kind of behavior just makes me wonder if like he went to an Anglican seminary and that's where he learned church management from.
You think he went to seminary? He got his license off some website. He literally pitched a tent, like pitched a big tent and said,
Yeah.
"Okay, here we go. Watch the circus."
Yeah. That's the shameful part, like about like churches not requiring their pastors to have like you know ex- exhibit competence before they hire them or follow them.
Yeah.
And I mean, I say it's shameful. I'm being kind of a jerk saying that, but it's like it is a responsibility that we have to kind of like check out, like if we're going to a new church for the first time, like we need to make sure that if it's in a denomination that we're learning what the denomination's about and what their structures are about. Who is this individual? Like where did they get trained or go to school? And I'm not saying that you have to go to school to be a pastor, but you do need training.
Yeah.
So, you could be trained in ministry in a church you grew up in, and that'd be great.
Yeah.
Look, you need to know those things, so you can try to avoid being taken advantage of, by people like this.
Yeah. There's a biblical concept that I think I think you and I have talked a lot about um, how the leadership ladder to me, and I don't know if you agree with this or not, but to me, it's like an apprenticeship ladder, right?
Yeah.
First, you come in when you go to seminary, you graduate. Great, we're going to stick you with the kids ministry, right? And you're going to learn how to deal with parents, and you're going to learn how to organize things. You're going to learn about the craziness that is the week in the life of underpaid ministers, and then when you do well with that and you kind of get into the flow of that, well, maybe we throw you towards youth ministry, or maybe if you show a certain gift, maybe we show you to the ministry that helps newcomers find their place in the church, right? But
Yeah.
you don't get to go from getting your degree, your bachelor's degree at seminary, to being the lead pastor. Like that's a dangerous thing, and that needs to stop in America. You know what I mean? And I just don't know how you feel about like the ability to just hang out a shingle on day one and say, "Here's a new church, and I'm the guy. Come to my church."
Yeah, like there's something very capitalist about saying, "Hey, well, I should just be able to open up a church because I speak well and people listen to me."
Yeah,
Um, and like that is a problem. Like the example throughout the New Testament is one of training and mentoring, and that's something I think we should follow. Not that we're blindly following the example there, because it can be argued that, well, like the structure of the early church doesn't really map onto our current situation much.
sure. Yeah,
But what does map on is that you are in a position of, socially speaking, you're in a position of power, um, and that comes with great power comes great responsibility.
yeah,
And it's a fact that like you need to prove yourself in ministry, and not just like your genuineness of doing ministry, but your capacity to do it. Like if you might have a passion for something you do not have the aptitude for,
yeah,
and that's kind of thing needs to get weeded out. At my church, in the way that I serve there, teaching Christian formation classes and preaching, these are things that were given to me to do. I wasn't like hard seeking them out. I'm taking advantage of that time, trying to build up experience in ministry. And just, I'm always getting feedback.
yeah,
Um, you know, my wife gives me feedback, the pastors give me feedback. So it's like, I get a lot of good stuff going on. And like that to me is an extremely valuable thing, other than like other ministry experiences that I've had in the past.
right.
Because I want to make sure that like I really am ready to do more ministry before I like aggressively push for it.
Yeah. Let me change gears and ask you your thoughts on a different idea.
Mhm.
Um, the Bible tells us that the love of what is the root of all evil.
Well, it says like the love of money is the root of all sorts of evils.
Right. So let me ask you this.
Just a direct quote.
So let me ask you this. Um, could it be? Is there an aspect of capitalism that makes us blind to our love of money? Is there something just baked into the American experience that just makes us kind of like how if you live in a house with cigarette smoke, you just go nose blind to the smell of cigarettes to a little bit. Unless like you go on vacation, then a week later you come back and you kind of go, "Oh, it smells like cigarettes." Like you have to get out of it in order to recognize it again. Is there
Yeah,
something like that equivalent to that like, man, we spend all of our lives preparing our kids to be successful, um, chasing nice cars and big houses and 401ks. Like, is that so normal to us, like the air we breathe, that we no longer have the ability to recognize when we are pursuing money above holiness or righteousness?
yeah. As far as I'm concerned, I mean, um, capitalism, with it, you're going to have a culture that develops from it, and that culture, if it's going to support that kind of economic system, will develop values. And we have cultural values that say success is good, and that like there's this whole hustle culture thing that
Right.
people are pushing now. And really what it comes down to is like there is always this expectation of you need to expand your wealth forward. It's not you need to build a wealth that will carry you past your working prime. It's just you need to keep building this wealth more and more. It's like people will people call it, well, the house I live in, a starter house, and I'm like, well, screw you. This is my house. This is
Right.
not a starter house. Like I don't need to go out and buy a more expensive house because I have more money, because then I can't retire as early.
Right.
So it's like there is that there, and it's just like it's such an expectation that that's how we are going to be.
Yeah.
To not be that way, I think, is a shock to people.
Yeah. Can I offer up the flip side of that coin?
Go for it.
Could it be that we are so normalized to um to the to the pursuit of like the well-intentioned pursuit of money, even
Hmm.
that if we didn't do that, if we actually had the epiphany and said, I'm not doing this anymore, like if we actually had that epiphany and said, well, I'm not doing that anymore, we would actually find out that there's nothing underneath that. Like there is no holiness, there is no righteousness, there is no purpose to my life. All I've ever known is pursuing that thing.
Yeah,
If I strip that away, there's really not much else.
yeah. I think you're hitting the nail on the head with that. Um, it's one of the big problems when like somebody travels, and especially to live in another country. Like like you might have this romantic idea of like, well, I'm going to go live in Slovenia because they have great universities there, and you get there and you realize how different everything is.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
It can cause, I mean, we call it culture shock, but it can
yeah,
be a just a psychic assault to deal with that.
yeah,
I mean, look on the wall behind me, right there. There are four bass guitars hanging up there. Um, you're representing, yeah,
yeah,
representing, a couple $1,000s worth of things. And I've had more basses than this in my life.
yeah.
And really, I need one of them.
Right.
I don't need all these.
Yeah,
Like one of these would satisfy all my needs as a bass player.
right,
And like, I look at them from time to time and I'm like, I should just get rid of these things.
right,
And and then my brain goes, but then the wall will look weird.
right. Yeah, right. But like, yeah.
I'm skewed too,
Right, but the lesson is vigilance, right? Vigilance, not in the paranoid way, like oh, we need to be watching people on the Mexican border kind of way, like
Yeah.
vigilance, like in our own lives. We need to be introspective and we need to be honest about what is excess and what brings us joy so that we might bring others joy, what brings us comfort so that we might comfort others, what brings us mental and physical and spiritual health so we might bring health to others, right?
Mhm.
And so like we need to be able to self-evaluate honestly and righteously about that. And there's no harming in evaluating others that way either. I don't think it's that hard to look at people like Greg Locke and kind of go, I don't think there's as much spiritual health there as he thinks there is.
Oh, well,
You know,
it's probably true of
and
me
and
and you
and
too.
I think if you go through a 2 year period of Greg Locke, and you're like, okay, he's literally hunting down women to expel from his church. Now he's telling people that he promised to give money back returns to that's not coming. Like, how many times do red flags need to pop up before somebody, hey, clue phone, it's for you.
Yeah, it's
You know,
yeah,
it's
like
like battered woman syndrome, right?
yeah, it's like my brain flashes back to George W. when he couldn't say fool me once, shame on you, fool me twice.
Yeah,
Yeah, well, we're not going to get fooled again. It's
right.
like because like it maybe it was a bit bumbling, but it's such a genuine way to express that. It's just like no, we've got to try.
Yeah, yeah. So let's park this plane. It's got to be radical accountability. It's got to
Mhm.
be, radical transparency. Like it's got to be people who are willing to shine a light in their own hearts, as well as shine a light in the hearts of people that we call leaders who don't seem to be doing a great job of leading. It takes bravery, right? To say, look, uh, sometimes the truth leads us to the conclusion that we are not as star spangled awesome as we think we are. But in that truth, that gives us the room to get better and to improve and maybe get one step closer to Jesus in the process.
Yeah, I mean, I think a great biblical example is just how Paul was like, "Hey, you know what? The Thessalonians are really awesome because when I preach to them, they don't believe a damn thing I say, and they and they have to go look it up in the scriptures to make sure I'm above board." And it's like that's like we need to kind of follow that Thessalonian example.
I agree. I agree. All right, look, we're church is lame. Once again, we are here to talk about stupid things Christians do that make the church look stupid. So we welcome your comments and your feedback. If you're listening to the podcast, write us a review, leave us a rating. If you're watching us on YouTube, by all means, leave us a comment and tell us how much you think that we're going to hell. We're here for it. We are totally here for it. And if you really want to write us the long letter, churcheslamepodcast@gmail.com.
And I proudly proclaim from the handbasket we're in, go in peace and serve the Lord. Amen.